Thank you, Mr. Pack. At our June 23rd council meeting, when you and I introduced this resolution, I declared my intention to offer an amendment for the complete removal of the monument. At our July 28th meeting, I offered that as Amendment 1, and in the name of transparency, I took the unusual step of asking the staff to post it on the council website under pending legislation before its introduction. I have heard the concerns of some members of the public that the resolution did not speak about the fate of the monument if removed. In response, I have done the same with this second amendment, having the staff post it on the council website in advance of its introduction this evening. It is a simple amendment incorporating all of the language from Amendment 1. So if we adopt this, we don't need to act on Amendment 1. And adding 4, storage of monument pending relocation. The monument shall be safely stored in the care of the county until a place for its ultimate relocation can be identified and prepared. And I offer this amendment now. Likewise, I have heard from members of the public who offered to pay for the removal of this monument, at least in part. Amendment 3, which I offer now, and which has, for the sake of transparency, been posted on the county's website in advance of its introduction this evening, incorporates all of Amendment 1 and adds establishment of fund for private donations. The County Finance Office is hereby directed to create a restricted fund to receive any private contributions that may be received to offset a portion of the county's cost of removing the monument from the courthouse grounds. And the county is hereby authorized to accept such private donations for said purpose. This Amendment 3 and Amendment 2 are not mutually exclusive. If we adopt both, we simply need to renumber the paragraphs such that one becomes paragraph 4 and the other paragraph 5.
Any additional comment or conversation on Amendment 2 or 3 for clarification before the chair calls for a vote on those two amendments?
Yes, Mr. Pat.
I hear you.
Because we have had no, if I can turn off the speaker. Because we have had no public input on Amendments 2 or 3, I believe that that is inappropriate for us to take any votes on the amendments this evening. And additionally, the entire resolution should not have been introduced under our emergency order. We were only supposed to deal with critical legislation and the budget at this time. As an example, we let several pieces of legislation expire, including short-term rentals that's also supposed to be voted on this evening. Certainly, this is a worthy issue to be given its proper attention, but it is not appropriate to vote on tonight when we still lack sufficient public comment, knowledge of the cost of any removal, approval of the Historic District Commission, which is not yet brought up this evening, and knowledge of where and how the statue would be stored. So because we have not had that feedback from the public, and I believe this resolution was introduced at a time that was deemed only critical to county operations and the budget, I believe that we should not vote on anything this evening, but especially the amendments which have had no public input at all.
Understood. Bills have been voted on from the floor, as amendments have been introduced from the floor on bills previously without additional public hearing, as you very well know. These amendments were deemed by the Office of Law as not being substantive. Therefore, there was no legal responsibility to re-advertise and repost Resolution 290. The amendments, again, were not deemed as substantive to the overall bill. Regarding any action before the Eastern Historic Commission, Unless 290 is passed, we have nothing to approach the Historical Commission with. So that's very, very premature. I know that's out in the airwaves and out on social media about have we gotten permission from the Historical Commission. But until we have something to approach to go on their agenda with, there's no need to request an audience before them. In response to that, I think it's premature to even bring that into the discussion this evening.
I would disagree as far as the appearance of being substantive. This is not your ordinary piece of legislation, and considering that we have changed from not removing more monuments and just a statue to the base, that is a complete and total change, and that we need to be above board and completely transparent with the public. And from what, I think most of us have been hearing, that they are very upset that they have not had ample opportunity to participate. We've had a lot of issues with our meetings, even though we've given our, reasonable effort, but public has not been able to listen in. We are actually dealing with an open meetings complaint right now because people were not able to participate and listen and view the most recent, especially public hearings and meetings. And there's no perfect solution for technology, but it certainly, arguably, we should wait until such time that we can host public meetings that are going to allow full participation and that we're not potentially in violation of the Open Meetings Act, which could negate the vote altogether. Technically, they may not be substantive, but I believe they are, and I believe the public feels that these are substantive changes.
Well, I'm sure there is a minority that feels that way as far as from our legal, our Office of Law is telling us, is that these changes are not substantive. So we're going to have to go on his legal interpretation of that.
Mr. Pack, I do just want to clarify that the bar for substantive amendment is high, but if there is any concern, then out of an abundance of caution to deal with that issue, the council could, if the resolution is amended, could have another public hearing on it to eliminate any concern about that. So just for the record.
You're absolutely correct. Anything further?
Yes. I would.
Yes.
I really think that under the circumstances, I really think this is such a public event, and there's a lot of people out there that really would love to probably just hearing these for the first time, and we don't know that, so we need to give them the right to think it through to see if that's right for them. So I'd like to push it down the road a little bit. So that people can put their thoughts together. Do they like these amendments? So, and it is tough running these meetings with nobody here. I think it's going to be going down the road for the next several months. We don't know when we're going to get back to normal, but this is a big deal for a lot of people, and it's a big deal for us to make such a historical decision on something that is 150 years old. I mean, we're changing the way we're looking at history, and I think we better really take a couple steps back and make sure we're doing the right thing. And at this time, I don't think we're doing the right thing. Okay.
I'm certainly understood, Mr. Callahan. Thank you for sharing. My take on the amendments are this. The amendments 1, 2, and 3. Amendment number 1 has been in the public domain for more than 2 weeks. Amendment number 1 was before the public when we had the public hearing on the resolution 290, I'm sorry. So that amendment dealing with the removal of the statue and the base was there in the public domain when we had the public hearing. So to say that the public did not have an opportunity to weigh in on that is not true. They did. It wasn't a public domain when we had the public hearing. We extended the public hearing for written comment even up until the Friday before. So they had ample opportunity to even write us on that amendment. So that's not true to say the public did not have ample time to hear amendment number 1. They certainly did. Amendment number 2 and amendment number 3 only establishes 2 things. It talks about the creating of the statute and the storage of the statute. It talks about a setting up of a dedicated fund to receive monies. That's all it does. So another public hearing to talk about the storage of the statute and the setting up of a fund, we can, but I think that you're holding a public hearing for 2 non-substantive matters on the resolution.
I think these 2 supplement matters are huge.
I'm sorry, I can't hear.
Are huge. We're not talking about Amendment 1. We know about Amendment 1, like you were saying. Everybody's heard that, but not everybody's heard 2 and 3. So I want to make myself clear on that.
Mr. Lesher,
what I would also
Mr.
say on 2 and 3 is on the one about storage. If the statute is simply removed, there will never be a statute that represents a very complex period in the county's history. The amendment that's being offered guarantees nothing other than it'll be stuck in storage with no defined purpose, probably forever. If people haven't come together with any effort over the past 5 years, it surely isn't going to happen once it's gone. And as far as the funding of it, we have no idea how much it's going to cost. And this amendment has 0 teeth. If there is a decision to change the monument in some way, then no taxpayer dollars should be used. And I've had this conversation with council members who are introducing. The amendment being offered tonight does not accomplish that. We need adequate time to make sure a private fund is fully available if and when a decision is made. And let me tell you one thing. If that statue is gone, nobody's going to give us any money after the fact. So we need to know how much it's going to cost and have the funds in hand if and when a change in some way is made to that monument.
Mr. Lesher, I hear from you now.
Yeah, Mr. Pack, Amendment 1, and the bulk of the substance of Amendment 2 and Amendment 3 is what came from Amendment 1. We have had that idea of changing from simply removing the statue atop the monument to removing the entire monument is something that the public has called for. We have over, I believe, 150 comments from the public asking us to clarify that the entire monument be removed, not merely the statue. And Amendment 1 I introduced really in reaction to that public sentiment and following on my commitment from way back on June 23rd. I think that substance has been adequately vetted by the public, and it certainly was in the domain of the public hearing. So both the spoken comments and the written comments on this addressed the removal of the entire monument. Now these minor details, these smaller details, which I would suggest are less substantive, having to do with the safe storage, the assurance that this will not be destroyed, and the one that we could already probably have solicited contributions for this, but this simply makes that explicit. Again, it doesn't really change the fundamental nature of the legislation here. And so I would submit that the real change was what was introduced prior to the public hearing 2 weeks ago in Amendment 1, which is now fully incorporated into both of these new amendments. Those ideas truly have been vetted in the formal process of our hearing and our written comment, and in the informal process of local media and social media. These have been widely discussed, and I think that we have wide public input on these matters.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lesher. So we're going to be moving Amendment number 1 off to, well, that has been withdrawn, and moving forward with Amendment 2 and Amendment 3. So I'm going to be calling first the vote on Amendment number 2 to incorporate Amendment number 2 into Bill 290. This is just to add Amendment number 2 into the bill for 290. That's what this is for, to add Amendment number 2 into the bill, into the resolution of 290. So, Madam Secretary, on Amendment number 2 to be incorporated into the resolution, please call your vote on Amendment number 2.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Mr. Pack, we need a motion and a second.
I will move Amendment number 2.
I wrote down Mr.
I believe we had an introduction, but not a motion.
Yeah, right. So to vote on Amendment number 2 to introduce, Mr. Lesher is making the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Amendment number 2 is seconded by Mr. DeVillio. Any further discussion on Amendment number 2? Hearing none, Madam Secretary, now for the vote on Amendment number 2 to be incorporated, please call your roll.
Mr. Pack?
Aye.
Mr. DeVillio?
Abstain.
Mr. Callahan?
No.
Mr. Lesher? Ms. Price?
Abstain.
So Amendment number 2 does not pass. So Amendment number 2 is not going to be incorporated into the bill. Now, the chair will entertain a motion on Amendment number 3, and this is dealing with the actual storage of the monument.
Mr. Pack, I will move for Amendment number 3.
Motion is made by Mr. Lesher on Amendment number 3. Is there a second?
The private funding, is it not?
Number 3 is the 5 funding. You're right. Pass my gavel over to Mr. Callahan, and I will second Amendment number 3. This is dealing with the setting of the private funding for the statue. So it'll be seconded by Mr. Pack. Any further discussion on Amendment number 3?
Madam Secretary, can you call the roll call?
Mr. Callahan?
No.
Mr. DeVillio?
No.
Mr. Pack?
Aye.
Mr. Lesher? Ms. Price?
No.
So Amendment number 3 fails. Still also dealing with the establishment of the fund. So now we have Resolution 290 before us as originally drafted. And with Amendment number 1 being withdrawn, it has the language, the first whereas clause is still back in there, as well as the language dealing with the depiction of signs and symbols of military persons, which we wanted to be removed. So I will open up any discussion on amendment number 1. Again, I know it has been withdrawn, but with amendment number 2 and amendment number 3 failing, you basically have the amendment back before council as originally drafted without those amendments being added to the changes to the language.
So I'll begin with comments on this. I fought back and forth on this several times. We've worked through many amendments. My problems with the amendments is the timing of right now with COVID-19. I'm absolutely committed to this goal, and I'm committed to being fair and transparent. This piece of legislation has been brought in front of the public at a time when we've not been able to open up to the public as we have in the past. We've battled technical issues, closed rooms to the public, and are in a financial freeze due to COVID-19. We've also joked earlier that every single meeting has been run differently through technology because we've done everything in our power to change and improve all of the public hearings that we've been having. It's in my opinion, that our attempt has failed to be anywhere close to the quality of the hearings that we've held in the past. I'm committed to move forward with a plan, a committee, and a ballot question so that we can put this issue to rest with a full public input at the nearest possible election.
Thank you, Mr. Villio. Anything further?
Yes, I would like to follow up with Mr. DeVillio's comments. I've thought very, very hard in the last couple months too. I think there's been some decision making that hasn't been the best. I feel like this isn't the most appropriate time to bring up something like this in a pandemic and put staff, put public, put all our safety people in sort of a way that we've got to be protected. There's a lot of moving parts that this isn't the time to be voting on this. The bigger thing that I've been thinking about is, like Mr. DeVillio said, I think that this should be in the hands of the community and not our hands. This should be something that should be voted on from the community. People have asked me many, many times, can you put it on the ballot? We all know we can't do that this go around. We'd have to do it in 22. So I think council really should give that some really hard thought to be doing that. It's only fair that the community make that decision, not us. I feel very uncomfortable with something that's happened, 155 years ago, and I'm making a decision on whether this thing should go or not. I don't think that's fair. I don't think that should be my decision. I don't think it should be the council's decision. I think it's the community that should be making that, because it's been there. We've gone over this 5 years ago. Mr. Pack, you did a great speech. We had the community there. We had everybody. We set a plan. We said that, if you could get a plan together and come in front of us, we could take a look at it, and we can put a Union statue right beside that one. We went all through that. And a prime example is the ladies that come in front of us a couple years ago with the Korean War monument. They did their homework. They've gone in front of us many times, and we have approved them to come in the courtyard to put their monument. That's the way we should be doing it.
Okay. Well, I know the way this vote is going. I'm going to call the vote in just a moment. But just my closing comments to your comment, Mr. Callahan. I can't count on my fingers the number of times you have said that the people of this county elected you to make decisions. And you have said it repeatedly on a number of occasions that they have elected you to make decisions. This is a decision that you have to make. You can't now throw it back on the people and say it should be the people's decision. And yes, let's be transparent. I initially wanted this to be a ballot question myself. I'm not saying that I did not, but once I knew that that avenue was closed, you remembered me saying, I am glad that that avenue was closed because I felt that the decision that I should be making as an elected official. So you can't go back and forth to say that one day they hired you to do a job and you're here to do the job and entrust it, and now say that I'm going to throw it back on the people. That's not really fair. So that if it's a thing that you don't want to vote for the statute, I understand that. But look, this is a very.
No, we need to stop that. You're putting words into his mouth.
I'm not.
And mine as well.
Let him
Mr.
say what
Filio,
he needs to say, and I'll comment on that. Let him say what he needs to say.
I haven't brought you up at all. So I don't know how you say I'm putting words in your mouth. I have not brought you up in the least. I was speaking to what Mr. Callahan has said previously regarding his position. So I haven't brought you up, so I don't know why you started putting words in your mouth. This is a monumentous decision, whether it's done during the time of a pandemic or whether it's during time of not a pandemic. It speaks volumes to what this county is saying about itself and its reputation. We can't say that because of a pandemic we cannot conduct business. We conducted business whether we were up on Chesapeake, the community center, and now we're conducting business here. The business of the county has never stopped. The business of the county has never stopped. We may have been closed to the public, but the business of Talbot County has never stopped. Not one day.
I didn't say it stopped. Okay, Mr. Pack, I did not say that. And look, let's go back 5 years ago. Okay, we're dealing with your change right now. You've done flip-flopped 180 degrees. So we're dealing with that as a council. So if I feel like, you know, it's the wrong time and we need the public to vote on this, that's what I think. So don't tell me that I'm this and I'm that, and you know, I should vote on it because the public.
I'm not saying that at all, Mr. Cullen. I did not say that. I'm not putting words in my mouth. Go back and look at the tape. I'm not putting words in your mouth. You have said repeatedly that the public has put you here to make decisions. That's all I said.
Well, what's wrong with that?
Absolutely nothing.
But it's okay for me to say that I think in this incident it should be in the community's hands, not mine. What's wrong with saying that?
I'm just saying if that's the way you feel, Mr. Callahan, then
right.
That's nothing wrong. If that's the way you feel. All I was alluding to is that in the past you have said that
I've said that many times.
That's all I said.
I've said that many times.
Well, what's the argument? That's all I said.
But the argument is this is something that's 155 years old.
It's not 155 years old. It was erected in 1916.
We're talking history.
Not 150 years old.
We're talking history here. That's what we're talking.
Yes, but the statue is not 150 years old. It was erected in 1916.
It's 106. It's older than us. That's for sure. And nobody's here that's on that statue. There's 84 names on that statue, and they can't stand in front of us and tell us what their thoughts are. So that's something you need to think about, too.
Okay. Now, Mr. Vilio, you were saying before?
That my decision, I've gone on the record and offered up an idea with a plan and forming a group and forming the money to do it. It was a simple one-page resolution, and unfortunately, it did fall at the wrong time. You just said that. The county has been open, but not to the public. This room has not been open to the public. The libraries have not been open to the public, where many people get their information. We just received a grant to extend broadband throughout the county. We know that not everybody has internet access. We know that there's lots of people that would fill a room for a typical hearing. That did not happen. In my opinion, the county council did a great job with the past hearings that they've done. We've exhausted our resources. Now it's time for us to put it back to the community. If they've asked 3 different councils to change their opinion, and we've tried, we're putting it back to the community to put it on a ballot question would be my plan, so that everybody has that opportunity to voice their opinion.
Mr. Pack?
Yes.
The timing of this on our agenda was not yours. It was not mine. It was the public. It was the public that asked for this. And perhaps the public didn't take into consideration the challenges that we would have with COVID restrictions, but here we are. It doesn't look like this is going to is going to pass tonight, and I want to thank the very many people who have expressed their opinions about this in person, in writing, by showing up on the courthouse square. The removal of this monument would not change the history of this county, and it may not directly improve anyone's economic or physical well-being. But the number who've expressed their feelings in this matter have made it clear that this is indeed a powerful symbol, and our actions on it tonight, I'm afraid, sadly speak of who we are now as a county and the extent to which we have not yet changed. I aspire to be better than this. Our failure to act to remove this monument from the courthouse square, in our failure to do so, Talbot County increasingly puts its tourism economy at risk, along with our legendary reputation for hospitality. Whatever it may have meant in the past, the Talbot Boys today is not viewed as a welcoming symbol. That we accommodate all people here with equity and with justice. Now, more than ever, if Talbot County's economy is to recover from the devastating impacts of COVID-19 pandemic, I fear that we further imperil it by allowing us to remain the last holdout of a Confederate monument on public property outside of a battlefield or cemetery in the state of Maryland. As Mayor Mitch Landrieu of New Orleans put it, to literally put the Confederacy on a pedestal in our most prominent places of honor is an inaccurate recitation of our full past. It is an affront to our present, and it is a bad prescription for our future. History cannot be changed. It cannot be moved like a statue. What is done is done. Surely we are far enough removed from that dark time to acknowledge that the cause of the Confederacy was wrong. And in the second decade of the 21st century, asking African Americans or anyone else to drive by this property that they as members of the public own, occupied by reverential statues and names of men who fought to destroy the country and deny that person's humanity, seems perverse and absurd. Centuries-old wounds are still raw because they never healed right in the first place. We are better together than we are apart. It's a much longer speech, and I gave you just a small piece of that, but it does seem to apply to our situation here today in Talbot County.
Thank you, Mr. Lesher. I don't have anything prepared other than to say that I am saddened as well to see that it appears that the vote would not be to remove the statue and to set up a way to fund its removal and also to make sure that it is properly stored until a site can be selected for its new home, which I thought was a very eloquent way of you handling that. And I want to applaud you for all your efforts to make sure that if removed, it will be done so appropriately and it would be funded with either private and public money. It appears that that's not going to happen this evening. I agree with what you're saying. I think that the tourism and also maybe even the restaurant industry here in Talbot County, especially here in the Eastern, may take a hit because of this. Where I was 5 years ago is not where I am today. People change, times change, and I've said repeatedly, a man who fails to change his mind will never change the world that's around him. I have changed, Mr. Callahan, from where I was before. I do not support the Talbot Boy statue remaining on the courthouse lawn. I don't think it's appropriate. I know what I said in the past. I'm very much aware of what I said in the past, but it's not appropriate to keep that symbol on the courthouse lawn. I've made my apologies to myself. I've made my apologies to persons previously because of my vote in the past. It's not one of my better votes, and I'm ashamed to have voted that way. But that's done. That's in the past. We can only look to the future and only make those changes today, which will impact our future. I think that not removing that statue will certainly say a lot about this county, a lot about this council as we move forward through the rest of this term and into the next. So it is very unfortunate. I would not be voting for a ballot question. It is responsibility of the elected officials to make this change and not hide behind it. I know what I said in the past about wanting it to be on the ballot. I did look at that. I was probably the first one who said that, but I was glad when it turned out that we could not do that. So fortune basically fell into my lap on that one because it is a decision that should be made by the elected body. So with that being said, again, I do also want to thank all those who called in, who wrote to us, either way, either for it or against it. Thank you for your time that you spent in doing that. We did the best that we were able to do with the technology. Thank you to Parker Dorm, our IT director, and also the Avalon, as well as the Bones phones. I know I'm saying that wrong. For all of their work in getting the technology and the software together so that we could communicate with callers. This is our new reality, gentlemen. We can't bring people into a room. We can't hold mass public hearings. This is a new reality. We have to conduct business as best we can. We may be this way for the end of this term and into the next year. So we can't keep on saying we need to have 100 people in a room. We're not going to get there. We're not going to get there. We're not. So we either have to realize where we are and do the best with the technology at hand. With that being said, if there's no further comment, as now introduced, the chair will call the vote on 290, Resolution 290. Madam Secretary, please call your roll.
Is this moved to a final reader? Has this been moved to a third reader?
It is eligible for vote tonight. It is a resolution, so it has been read already by Madam Secretary for a second time.
That's correct. An ordinance would go to third reader.
Anything further, Mr. Lesher?
It's a resolution, so it has no time frame, unlike an ordinance.
But I don't think Mr. Lesher extending this or postponing this. You did a yeoman's job at what you've done with your amendments. I think you considered what you were hearing from your fellow council members, what you were hearing from the public. I don't want to belabor this point. I don't want to belabor the public and the media any further with this. You've done your best. You've done your best, sir. And I think at this point, let's go ahead and call the roll and move on. Madam Secretary, please call your roll on Resolution 290 as drafted.
Mr. Pack?
Aye.
Mr. DeVillio?
No.
Mr. Callahan?
No.
Mr. Lesher?
Aye.
Ms. Price?
No.
Resolution 290 fails.